So here we go, my friends, buckle up because today's story is a vintage gem already well stocked in the cellar of Trumpian escapades. The man who, not so long ago, proclaimed himself the greatest expert on the system, the self-appointed chief fixer of the planet, the supreme authority on everything from weather to ecology, now finds himself in a somewhat different posture, meaning, he has traded the omniscient suit for the I don't know outfit, an accessory he now brandishes more often than a cowboy running low on bullets. Once, he claimed to know more about temperature than the thermometer itself, more about the environment than the entire planet, and more about the Constitution than Thomas Jefferson with an unlimited Wikipedia subscription. But today, when asked if his own administration is violating the Constitution, he answers with the enthusiasm of a goldfish, I don't know. Asked about immigration policy? I don't know. About his alleged medical expertise? Bobby told me. You'd almost hear a school kid caught in the act in front of the principal. It's not me, it's Kevin. And yet, amid this festival of admissions of ignorance, the gentleman still finds time to play the grand strategist, demanding, hold on to your hats, a Nobel Peace Prize, nothing less. As if the entire world would stop, take a coffee break and say, well, it's time to reward the man who revolutionized international diplomacy by inventing tweeting in all caps. Because yes, in Trump's universe, writing I in all caps is great diplomatic art, almost a universal language to the point that Gen Z themselves would feel offended by such typographical aggression. And to top it off, apparently thanks to him, the sun rises every morning, boats float on the ocean, and gravity, that mysterious force, keeps working. A resume that would make Isaac Newton pale. But what can you do when you're used to claiming credit for everything from the existence of oxygen to the invention of toilet paper? It becomes logical, in his mind, that the Nobel is the natural next step. The problem is, if by some strange coincidence he actually got it, we already know how it would end. A special weekend at Mar-a-Lago, a souvenir photo with the trophy for the modest sum of $500, Nobel edition t-shirts and caps at $100 each, and why not a limited edition trading card line, the great moments of my greatness. But behind the joke remains this long list that would make a notary shudder. Accusations of sexual assault, racist remarks, Islamophobia, questionable military decisions, and a leadership style that clearly belongs in the category, I leave the world in worse shape than I found it. So maybe instead of chasing a medal he doesn't deserve any more than a cat deserves a pilot's license, he could find a new hobby. For example, negotiating a treaty with Wakanda, that imaginary country with infinite resources, just to give us a break for a while. And since the absurdity machine has no stop button at Donald Trump's place, let's imagine for a moment the media circus that would follow this improbable awarding of the Nobel Peace Prize. On D-Day, live broadcast, red carpet, journalists from around the world, and him, entering the room with the air of a king returning from a crusade, handing out salutes like he's throwing papal blessings. Except at his place, the blessing is done with a red cap screwed on his head and a slogan embroidered in capital letters. He'd start his speech with a little historical reminder, no one has ever received this prize better than me, no one deserves it as much as I do, even Alfred Nobel would have applauded me, before sliding in that actually, he invented peace on a Tuesday morning between 2 tweets and a burger. Then he'd thank his amazing teams, meaning himself, his mirror, and possibly his hairdresser for taming the legendary lock. The guests, torn between wanting to laugh and wanting to call a doctor, would politely applaud while he's already imagining the trophy packaging in the Mar-a-Lago gift shop. And don't think I'm exaggerating. Trump is that unique mix of used car salesman and televangelist, always ready to turn an international award into a marketing kit. This Nobel he'd turn into a perfume, ode to victory for men and walls, a line of golden dinnerware, eat like a laureate, and a mobile app that sends you every morning a 100% Trump quote, guaranteed no filter or fact-checking. And while the whole world wonders how we got here, he, comfortably settled in his private club, would proudly tweet, I made the Nobel great again. But the most ironic thing is that in this permanent theater that is Donald Trump's career, logic has never really been an honored guest. What matters is the show, the staging, and the idea that somewhere he still believes he has a divinely inspired role, as if the creator himself had commissioned him to regulate the climate, redraw borders, and reinvent the meaning of the word humble, except that in his dictionary that word doesn't exist. Because what makes this story particularly tasty is how it condenses in a single episode all the flaws of a character who, for years, has shaped his public image with superlatives and self-congratulations. When he was still a newcomer in presidential politics, Trump presented himself as a living encyclopedia, unique edition, self-corrected, claiming to know better than anyone the Constitution, laws, economy, diplomacy, weather, and probably even the internal workings of the toaster. He repeated to anyone who would listen that he was the only one capable of fixing the system, that no one had as much vision, as much skill, as much very big brain, in his own words. But over time, and probably also with polls crumbling like an old cookie, the stance changed. We went from thunderous confidence to the fog of "I don't know." Asked about decisions made by his own administration, he says he's not a lawyer. Pressed on constitutional interpretation, he dodges. Questioned about specific accusations, he passes the buck to a subordinate or invokes a third party as the only source of information, with a disarming seriousness. This shift, from the man who claims to know everything to the one who says he knows nothing, creates a comic, almost theatrical contrast, especially when it clashes with his public demands for global recognition. Because in the same period he admits ignorance about major issues, he demands the world grant him the highest existing peace distinction, the Nobel Peace Prize. And there, it's hard not to see the gap. On one side, the assumed ignorance on crucial subjects. On the other, the claim to a legacy worthy of historical figures who worked to end wars, abolish oppressive regimes, or establish lasting international treaties. And this is exactly where the episode gets its full flavor. It's not a rumor launched by some obscure social media account or a dubious interpretation by a tabloid. No, it is indeed the White House itself that opened the door to the idea that a Nobel Peace Prize should go to Donald Trump. The announcement happened in the spotlight, with that almost unreal moment when an Indian correspondent, visibly unimpressed by the ex-president's self-proclaimed aura, dared to voice out loud what many thought silently. He didn't just ask a question. He laid out, point by point, the list of inconsistencies, contradictions, and accusations that make this ambition at least bizarre. And the comparison, launched with the confidence of a surgeon in the middle of an operation, fell like a guillotine. Wanting to award Trump the Nobel Peace Prize is like putting Tom and Jerry in the same relaxation club, Harry Potter and Voldemort as roommates, or Batman and the Joker in a yoga seminar. The images were absurd but terribly effective. They summed up in a few metaphors the impossibility of reconciling the Nobel's international image with Donald Trump's political and personal career. And the most striking thing is that this confrontation was not just based on opinions but on documented facts. The controversial role he played in crises costing millions of lives, including a tragic proportion of children, his aggressive communication habits. With those all-caps tweets that sound more like megaphone threats than diplomatic language, and his permanent obsession with claiming credit for everything good in the world, from sunrises to universal gravity. The correspondent's implicit argument was clear. If we start to consider such a career as worthy of a Nobel, then the very meaning of the prize collapses, along with the memory of those who received it for genuine advances toward peace. And here lies the heart of the problem. Beyond the folklore, the punchy phrases, and the all-caps outbursts, there remains a record which, for his detractors, looks less like the legacy of a peace builder and more like that of a sower of tensions. Ordinary sexism, sexual assault allegations never fully dissipated, racist remarks, assumed Islamophobia, contested military decisions. The list is as long as a campaign speech but with far fewer applause. For his supporters, he embodies firmness and straightforwardness. For his opponents, he is the perfect illustration of a leader who leaves the world worse off than he found it. So seeing him claim the Nobel Peace Prize is a bit like seeing an arsonist ask for Firefighter of the Year medal. The image is striking but it doesn't hold water. And yet, it is precisely this contradiction that fuels the permanent spectacle Donald Trump offers on the international stage. A spectacle which, whether admired or hated, forces us to ask, what remains of the value of a prize when it becomes a personal marketing tool? One thing is certain. The story is not over, and the next episode promises to be just as improbable. So if you want to keep following this political soap opera crazier than a Netflix series, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you don't miss anything, and stay tuned. Because with Donald Trump, the next twist is always just one tweet away.